it is fermentation day, so I thought I'd bring you along on a ride, put this on YouTube, see what I'll do. I'll show you everything. I won't give you the recipe, but I'll show you what I do. So we're going to turn this sticky molasses, it smells like licorice, and we're going to turn it into delicious rum. So let's get going. So it is currently 3 degrees outside, so it's probably about 4 degrees in here. It's freezing. This is really thick and sticky, so what I'm going to do is line up all the buckets up on the floor. First job, get them warmed up with the heater, so it'll be easy to pour later on. 6 25 kilo buckets we're going to go through today. It is hard work, so hence the heating, make it as easy as possible. First real job is I make a syrup with brown sugar, so Demerara syrup. The Rummerati, self-proclaimed rulers of rum, will hate me for it, but I don't care. So first job is fill up 3 of my little stills with water, boiling, and then I can make the syrup in the fermenters. That hot liquid also helps break down and loosen off the molasses, and then I start adding other water to it, which we'll see later. So let's get these filled with the old hose. That's it, let it fill up. Right, water's on, boiling. Can't make a syrup without sugar, so here is a big bag of Demerara. Pretty much all this goes in. I've got the fermenter on scales. Oh, I've opened that like an idiot. There we go, there's 1. So I'll do 3 of these. And the reason I do this is because there's sugar molecules in molasses that the yeast can't eat. So it will never turn it all into alcohol. And I'm in the business of making alcohol, so I put a bit of this in. This is just cane sugar rolled in molasses, so it's all cane sugar. Rummerati won't like me, but it's all good stuff. It's all come from sugarcane, so it's all rum. There we go. Right, and there's a good reason I fill it with water up here, because they're heavy enough as it is. There we go. Now I'm just going to wait for that to boil. I've got the still filling up with water, not to use in this. So I do like a cleaning run, just distilling water. And then the water that comes off the condenser is the perfect temperature for fermenting. So I'll use that. If I can, I try to do this on a day that I'm doing a cutting run, because it's the perfect temperature again, but not today. So let's clean up and make things nice and sterile. Right, the water's there. So time to unload. Probably not the safest job in the world, but it's okay. It's me, it's not an employee. So I'm weighing the water out to match the weight of the sugar. Have to do this in 2 loads, and then I give it a little stir, and we do it all, and then that's it. My syrup's ready. Time to add the molasses, and then water. Right, that's the first half. There we go. A little bit of a mix up. Got my molasses stirring device here. Just a mop handle, nothing fancy. There's literally nothing fancy about what I do here. I don't know if you've ever tried making a Demerara syrup, but it takes a while to actually get it to fully dissolve. Next one. Right, time. My least favourite part of this process, pouring out the molasses out of these big old buckets. Sleeves up, it gets a bit messy. No one told me when I started making rum how much heavy lifting there was. And I got my tiddly little spatula, and I'm just going to get in here, scrape it all out. And this is really why I heat it up, because this gets really hard work when it's all freezing cold. Don't worry about getting everything out, because I use these buckets and load them up with water to then fill with a fermenting barrel. So I make sure I get it all out then. But you'll see that. Someone's at the door. There we go. Last one of our last barrel. 2 buckets left. Watch the splash. There we go. Luckily the heater was pointed at the buckets for this one, and they kind of slithered out quite nicely. All right, one more. One more. Right, done. Let's give us a little rinse up in here. Still got it on it. Then a little mix up until I start at the top of the blob of molasses and just let the water do the rest. Create a nice vortex. Right, time to fill up with water. Just turn the water on the condenser on this, so let's have a little feel of the temperature. It's probably going to be really cold still. Yeah. So my setup over here is my 2 buckets. So that's kind of what they look like once the molasses is out. There's still a bit in there. Scales, so I weigh the water, big whisk, give it a good old whisk, try and wash all of that molasses off, and then that goes over into the bucket, the fermenter, and I use the same 2 buckets that went into the fermenter, so I know exactly all of that molasses is going into that fermenter, and then I change the buckets to the next 2. So I'm just going to let this do its thing. Got distilled water coming off here. Tell you what, that feels really hot, and I know why. So I haven't turned the power down. So that's at 31 degrees. I want it around 20 to 25. So let's just give that a little chance to catch up with that. I've just turned it to half power. 23. Bingo. All right, you can go in there. So I'm weighing it here, and then all I do is use this, and then I use the hose to kind of just rinse down the sides. This is pretty slow, but I do get caught out sometimes when I switch off because I think it's really slow, and then I've got to scramble a bit. But it's all good. It's all good fun. So yeah, wash all this molasses off, and then what you can't see is my laptop there. So every time I put a bucket in, I record it on the spreadsheet because there's no way dancing around doing different things. There's no way I can keep count of how many litres of water have gone in. Alright, got another bucket here, switch that. Make sure it zeros. Thank you. There we go. Alright, just gonna let that one kind of sit. Give this a good old whisk up. Scrape the bottom with the whisk. Give it the old heave-ho. And the good thing about chucking it over like that is it really incorporates a lot of air, and yeast needs oxygen to kind of start growing and expanding its colony when it goes in. So that's good stuff. Right, let me crack on. I'll come back to you when this is done in about 6 days. Right, that's it, all done. Let's give this a little mix up. I've got my Bluetooth dongles in here already. Probably hear it knocking about. Just to start acclimatizing to the temperature and try and get that as 100% accurate from the start as possible. Still hard work, even with all this water in it. So to give you an idea, the water level is about here. So it leaves a bit of head space for expansion, but it's never enough. It does spit out a little bit. Data drives everything. There's a recipe, and then there's key points that we need to hit: temperature and pH generally, and the amount of sugar is what we're after. So it all goes in here. Start off over here. So I'm going to take 3 temperature measurements: temperature probe, the old dingly dangly dongle that's in there, and then when I take the gravity, the sugar content, this is going to give me one as well. So temperature on this one, 25.7. This one, hot. 26.1, and this one 25.5. Okay, so now I'm going to take the density and in the process another temperature reading. So this is a refractometer, but a digital one. I don't have to look up to the sky like I'm Galileo. Links to my phone, modern technology, love it. Let's leave the past in the past where it belongs. I do love it when the gravities are pretty consistent time and time again. It's almost like the recipe is consistent. Right, next job is pH. It's a little pH monitor. So 5.52. So on the acidic side of things, and I want it down lower, nearer 5 really. So let's get the citric acid. So beaker on the old dealer scales, nice and accurate. Normally I go in with about 150, so what I always do is I start off with about 100 grams, and just see where that goes. There you go. 525. I've never had them all match. Right, now it's time for yeast. Okay, so yeast time. I use fresh baker's yeast for my fermentations. Why don't I use distiller's yeast? Well, why not? This stuff works, it makes a great flavour, and it's also a third of the price, so it kind of makes sense really. And I like to be different, so I do things my way. So it's just a big block of live yeast. It smells delicious. I'll just break it up a bit into a bucket. You see that? Oh, weird. It's very weird and sticky sometimes. Right, I've got my big whisk, because what I'm going to do is take a couple of scoops of this out. Dry yeast, you can just sprinkle it over the top. Probably could sprinkle this over the top, but I like to just give it a little bit of a mix, dissolve all that yeast, because that's how I used to do it in the kitchens. It takes a little bit of persuading sometimes that it wants to dissolve. And because I've missed it, let's pour another liquid into this bucket. Give it a mix. Try not to step in the molasses, get the mop on that in a minute. And this isn't just for YouTube, I do always give this a little bit of a tickle. Okay, clamps on. I'm gonna get all this done and I'll come back to you in a bit. Okay, so lids are on, airtight, jackets are on for a bit of insulation, try and keep that temperature up as long as possible. And then they're gonna get these air valves. So these are kind of like little non-return valves. So they got these little devices in them. So the gases come up, there's a water level there and it just bubbles away. So it lets gas come out, but no oxygen gets in. And then because it's 3 degrees, they get the blankets. Someone once commented how it was ruining perfectly good blankets, but they were purchased for this process, so I'm okay with it. I get some funny old looks on these stains. It's not what it looks like, I promise. Right, that is it. Fermenting 101, easy peasy, takes a hell of a long time, a lot of effort, but it's worth it when you taste the goods. So that's gonna stay there now, about 2 weeks. Hopefully I'll get to about 9–10% alcohol, and then we'll distill it.